This isn't a motorcycle, it's a golf cart. We're going to install the Lithium Rhino 65 amp hour battery system. Like I said in the intro, we're doing something a little different today. And so instead of motorcycle content, we're actually going to install the 65 amp hour Lithium Rhino battery system into our 2015 Club Car Precedent. I'm going to reposition the camera. We'll go through what comes in the kit, and then we'll get started. Let's quickly go over what came in the box. So, of course, 65 amp hour lithium battery, pretty heavy. The case is pretty solid. They have these spring-loaded handles on the top. I don't know, I'm only going to put it in once. I didn't think they need to spend that much. Also comes with the charger that you'll mount inside, the controller or the interface, user interface that will mount up on the front or in the dash area. A bunch of instructions for not only the lithium and the installation, but also the power converter and the charger itself. An adapter so you can replace the power port that's already on the cart. Power converter, and they give you some protective equipment. So gloves and glasses. This is no joke. So you're going to be dealing with lead acid batteries. So wear the safety glasses, wear the gloves. You'll see I'm actually going to wear rubber gloves. But getting battery acid on your hand is not cool. Also during this install, I'm going to be adding some other parts. So since my current lead acid battery has a watering system, I'm going to replace the watering system with these caps. I'm going to put a link down in the description as to where I found them. I'm going to add a 12 volt fuse block, and this will be to run all my accessories, so I'm not just plugging them all together off of the power converter. And then I'm going to add a little USB port, and this will go up in front, so that way in the future we can plug in a phone or whatever else, USB accessories. So that's it. That's the hardware that comes in the box. Let's get started. All right, first things first, let's get the seat out of the way. Club Car Precedent's pretty straightforward. They just lift right out. So let's put this in a safe place. All right, we've already turned the power to tow. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and remove the battery watering system. As I alluded to in the beginning, I have replacement caps for this. So these are pretty easy. You just turn them counterclockwise, and then they lift right out. Be careful. Remember, I'm wearing personal protective equipment, glasses, and gloves. First step is to cap all of these. Like I said in the intro, these are just standard caps that you can buy online. I bought them from Flow Systems. They're pretty cheap. Bought a bunch of them. There. So that battery is ready to be removed. Let's go ahead and do the rest of them. Because these have valves at the bottom that touch the acid, this is covered in acid, so we're going to be very careful with it. All right, next we're going to disconnect the power from the cart. You start with the negative, and the reason why is I'm using a ratchet, and granted, everything in this golf cart is plastic, but if I swing this and hit something metal, I'm just touching the ground to the ground. So this is a technique for automotive as well as golf carts. But you start with the negative, disconnect it, you move that out of the way. So now the entire circuit system is dead. From here, I'm going to disconnect the positive, and then I'll disconnect each battery from each other. Now, with all of the cables off, we are going to remove the battery hold downs. What I didn't say before is the battery posts are 1/2 inch. And then this is, let's see, 5/8. Pretty simple, just take these out. I went and I bought some long, heavy-duty cable ties. So what I'm going to do, since these are going to need to get moved a couple of times, I'm going to go ahead and put a long cable tie, heavy duty cable tie on each battery. And this will allow me to lift these going forward. So once with those in place, the batteries just lift out. All right, there's that. I'm going to go ahead and remove the other 5 and we'll keep going. Here we go. All of the batteries are out. Just wanted to point this out before I go any further. I'm going to back this outside, use pressure washer, clean the engine compartment out. All right, next we need to get to this trim piece here so that we can take stuff apart and remove some of the other parts. So the first step is to loosen up the rear cowl. Two 2 T30 Torx bits. Makes quick work of this. There, nice and loose. All right, before we can remove the lower piece, we have to remove its mounting. So there's 4 T30s that hold the floor mat in place. Okay, there's 3 T40 screws that hold this piece in. Then this trim piece just tips and pulls right out. Take this trim ring off. There we go. Now it'll come out much easier. All right. Next is the removal of the dash. Dash is 2 T30s and a T15. And there's the dash. So here is the user interface. It's going to mount, move this out of the way. It's going to mount right here. I'm going to move it just past this screw. This is the screw that holds the dash in. So we'll get this mounted. We have to drill a hole back through the cowl to run the wire down and out of the way. I could probably drill up from the bottom, but I'm going to drill down from the top. So what we're going to do is we're going to mount this just to the right of that fastener. So to start with, I'm going to put a guide hole for the center screw. And then that way I can do the other 2 once this is in position. All right, it's snug. I'm going to position it right to left so that it's straight. I'll drill the other 2 pilot holes. Go, nice and snug. Next will be the dash. So what I've done is I've installed a USB power port. I still have the plastic over it. But the intent here is that when we're using the cart, we can plug in a phone. I added wiring. Of course, here's the USB power port. And then what they tell you to do is to tap off of the cold side of the ignition. So the way that these are laid out, green is the hot side, and blue is the cold side. So what I did is I went and I cut the connector off and I put a new connector and put a tap off of it. This will run to the power converter or the power inverter that runs 12 volts. This will turn it on and off. All right, so these are the wires that I'm running up from the battery compartment. The blue wire is the one I just told you about that is going to tap into the cold side of the ignition. This turns on the power converter. And then these are the power ports or the spade connectors I'm going to use to power that USB charger. All right, so I put a spade connector on the end of the blue wire. I'm going to connect it here. Okay, so that will power up the power converter. And then here's my power tap providing power to the USB. Same thing. I'm going to plug it in. Connects like that. These are all my electrical connections. So now we put this back in place. There's a bunch of tabs. It's a little awkward to get in and out, but there we go. I'm going to run these wires out of the way. And that's what our dash will look like. So let's go over wire management. What I've done is I've ran the wires for the turn on for the power inverter and my USB power in this trench, and then the display I ran in the other trench, and it runs up up under the dash. Next, we're going to go ahead and remove this power port right there and make room for the power port that comes with the kit. All right, here we are. I pulled the panel back out. So the charge port, it's this one right here, we have to completely undo it because it pulls out through the front. So there's a little bit of work we have to do. So this cable has 3 wires in it, the positive, the negative, and a charge interrupt so that you don't try and put the thing in gear. So what we're going to do, so here's where it is on the other side. So there's the positive, the negative, and the charge interrupt. So the charge interrupt is just a butt connector. There, I'm going to undo that. And then we have to undo the positive side of the solenoid and the negative on the controller. Take this, loosen it up, undo these eyelets. There's a lock washer there. So this we're going to put back on simply because we need it later. This is the charge port, right? All right, the next one is here on the ground. So we have to get this plug out of the way. All right, in order to get to it, instead of an extension, I just got a deep well. Anyway, we got to unplug this orange wire. I don't know what it's for. Not too worried right now, but we need to loosen this so that we can get, there is the power cord or charge cord. We'll put everything back the way it was. Put this orange plug back in. This orange plug goes back to the motor, so I'm assuming it has something to do with making this run. And I'll plug this back in. Again, I don't know what all these do yet. I'm not going to worry today. So there is enough clearance to let us get the charge adapter out of the way. This is the charge port, 3 screws, pretty straightforward, and it pulls out through the front. And there is the original power port out of the way. So this gives us room for the new power port that goes into the trim piece. All right, here's the trim piece with the charger put in. It fits, well, it doesn't fit. It's a squeeze to get it to go in there. Got to press it in. And then it just comes through the back. So what I'm going to do off camera, I'm going to drill 3 holes and put in 3 screws. All right, here we are up above, giving you a better view. So as you can see, I've got it in there. I oriented the flap up. In some of the other videos I've seen, they have it flapping down. The reason I did that is when you're plugging it, when you're done, it naturally goes to cover it. Anyway, let's go ahead and put it back in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill these holes out, and I'm going to reuse the screws that were used for the power port mount. And then these screws will now fit. So I'm going to put it right there. I'm going to drill 2 pilot holes and put screws in. I've zoomed in a bit to show you what we're going to do next. So here's the power transformer. There's 5 wires that come out. So the blue one we've already talked about. That's the one that powers this thing on. It's just a signal that comes from the ignition switch. Then there's 2 more I've zip tied together that have eyelets on them. These go to the battery. And what these do is they provide the input power, the 48 volts, for the power converter. So I'm going to move that here out of the way. And then the last 2 is a black and a yellow. This black and yellow, black obviously is ground, and then the yellow is the switched power. So instead of tapping everything into this switched power, I bought this 6-place fuse block. And the way it works is there's 6 circuits powered off of the bottom bolt. So that powers one side of the fuse, goes through the fuse, and then to these individual outputs. This will allow me to power all of the different accessories. I'm going to power obviously the USB port that you saw me put in, but I'm also going to put lights on here, and then maybe a sound system, who knows. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to mount this next to the power converter right here, and then I'm going to trim these wires because I like it to be nice and tidy. The yellow is going to attach at the bottom, and the black is going to attach to the top. So pretty straightforward. I have to drill 4 pilot holes, put the screws into the plastic, trim these, and put eyelets on them. All right, so the way this is set up, I've already done the positive. It's at the bottom. It's hard to see anyway. But I've shortened the wires, put an eyelet on them, and then I have the waterproof shrink to fit ones. It's not necessary here, but I like the way it looks. So we're going to loosen this up. There's 3 washers that go under this bolt, or sorry, under this nut. So you have the nut, you have 1 washer, 2 washers, and a lock washer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the first washer there. I'm going to route my wire, get it in place, put the second regular washer on, the lock washer, and the nut. There you go, nice and snug. Wire is routed. This is the wire that runs and powers the USB power source. So I'm going to trim this. I'll probably, I don't know, loop it around this side here. Run the negative to one of these negative ports. Run the positive to the positive port. And then that way I'll have a fused output for the USB feed. All right, so here we have it. The wire that feeds the USB port runs up, goes next to the fuse box. I wired in the positive side and the negative side and put a 10 amp fuse. With that, this cover goes on. Next, we're going to install the permanent mounted charger. So the way this works is this end plugs into a cord, which it comes with a cord, and then this plugs into the cord and goes into here. The other end is the charger that goes to the battery. And in that case, it's just a large high amperage 2-pin. I'm going to use these 2 screws to mount this inside the compartment. And I'm going to move it a bit forward. And I'm going to run 1 screw here, 1 screw here. I'm going to see how it does over a while. If this is enough, I'll leave it. If not, there's 2 more at the bottom and then 2 vertical on a bottom bracket. And there we have it. 2 screws. We'll see how this holds it in. All right, next we're going to connect the cords. Like I said earlier, there's 2 things coming out of it. One, this is the charge power input, and this is the charge power output. The output will connect to the battery when we get that far. So here is the cord that comes with it. What you do is you plug this into the one side that is there, and then the other side here. And these cords, as ungainly and awkward as they are going to go right here, held in by this ample zip tie. All right, here we are getting ready to do the electrical. One thing I forgot to point out at the beginning of the video when I went through everything that comes in the kit, I forgot to point out the cables. They actually give you replacement high voltage cables, and then they also give you this power port that connects to the battery. You could probably reuse what's already there, but I don't know if you can tell on the video, but if you look at the size of these cables that they provide, they're a much heavier gauge, which means that there is less current loss or less power loss running through these. So let's go ahead and open this back up. I'm going to remove the existing power cables and install these. Another thing I'm going to do, so the instructions that they give you tell you to connect the power charger and the 12-volt converter directly to the lithium battery. Since we've got such good power transfer through these large cables, I'm going to make a little bit cleaner of an installation, and I'm going to put both the charger and the 12-volt converter up inside so that the only thing attached to the battery itself are these high power cables. Also, another thing I'm going to do, on the original charger there was this wire loom. I'm going to put that wire loom over the new charger connector to kind of clean it up a little bit. I'm going to take this 12-volt converter and I'm going to run it in the loom, the original loom where the switch goes. And then I'm going to reuse the loom that's used on both the ground and the hot on the new power cables. All right, here's the wire for the power. And if you notice, let me get this out of the way, there's a pink wire here with a plug-in. Since I'm not reusing that, I'm still going to have this pink wire connect there. That's the tow haul switch. So I'm going to cut this off and put a ring terminal on there so that I can reconnect it. All right, so here's the ring terminal on there, just crimped, and it's the shrink style. What we're going to do next is we're going to go ahead and remove this cable and put in the new power cable. Our connections now are going to be the charger cable, the new power cable, and the 12-volt converter. All of those are going to go on here along with this ring terminal. All right, so there is the positive side. Let's do the negative side. Now that that's back together, one thing I do want to mention, in some videos where they show the installation of this kit, they bypass the motor controller. I called Lithium Rhino's tech support and asked if that was absolutely necessary. And they said for this car, for a 2015 Club Car Precedent, it wasn't necessary, and I could just leave everything together. So that's what I'm doing. For those people who do know how to bypass the controller, have at it. But personally, I'd rather leave everything as stock as possible. And in fact, that's why I'm reusing the wire loom, because I want it to look stock. I want it to be as stock as possible. All right, so there's that. I'm going to fold this back up in place, button it in, and do some cord management. And next, we're getting onto the battery. All right, what I've done is I've put some green duct tape here. And the reason why is Lithium Rhino gives you this template, and it is the footprint of the battery. And the reason I put this here is when I lay it in place, I can kind of see where everything is in relation to where I want to mount it. But also, when I mark it with my black marker, I have something to see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this where I want the battery to be. So spaced right about there, equally spaced front to back. And this will allow me to mark my spots and then drill pilot holes. All right, so 4 1/8-inch pilot holes. Next, we will set the battery in place. We'll line up with those pilot holes and then put in our 4 screws. Next is the final electrical hookup. All right, here we are down at the battery. 2 cables to hook up for power and a communication cable for the monitor. So let's do the communication cable first. There's this cap that goes over. This is the RS485 connection. So if you look, how well you can see it, there's multiple pins in here. The CAN connection only has 2, so that's how you know. This is also keyed. There's little ribs that allow you to put it in or make it so you only put it in one orientation. So let's go ahead and put this in, press that in, spin the collar. There we are. Nice and snug. All right, so when we connect up the main power cables, just like when we did the disconnect, we want to do the negative last. So that way, so this comes with plugs over each one of those. When I popped that one out, it fell. But we want to do the positive first, so that way, if when we're swinging our wrench, we hit something, when we're connecting the circuit, it's just negative to negative. There's the positive. Let's route the negative and do the same. There you have it. That's the final electrical connections. All right, so let's go over the last of the installation. So the power cables are together. Gone ahead and cleaned up all the wiring. The one power cable comes out and now is plugged into the charger. And our display. All right, here we are at the display. I do want to go over it before I charge the cart and before we do our wrap up. With the external controller, you can turn the whole system on by pressing the on-off button at the bottom. You don't need to do that if you're not driving the cart and just want to look at the state of the battery. As you can see here, we're at a 44% charge. It has time to empty, a current temperature, current voltage, and current usage. If you press the on-off button once, it goes to the next page. This has some other display or information, whether or not discharge is on, charge is on, what the max temp that the battery is seeing, what the min temp that the battery is seeing, and what the status is. And then the last page, like I said, was the status of each of the cells. There's, according to this, 16 cells in this battery. When you're not using this, you turn it off by pressing and holding the on-off button. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. About 5 seconds it turns off. So that's it. So there we have it. That's the installation of the Lithium Rhino 65 amp hour battery set. A couple of things. Lithium Rhino was really helpful in the making of this video. I called them, talked to tech support, had a couple of questions. Great folks to deal with. There was a couple of issues with how my set was packaged. They made it right. I'm really impressed with Lithium Rhino. I highly recommend you check them out. A couple of things, use and care of this battery. So because this is lithium and not lead acid, it can withstand freezing. So here in northern Michigan, where we are today, it gets quite cold. And they say you can leave it together. One recommendation they do have, though, is if it's going to be sitting for 3 months or more, or give or take 3 months, they recommend disconnecting the battery. Here in the garage where the cart will be stored, it doesn't get quite as cold because it's an attached garage. So I'm going to leave everything together. I may disconnect the battery, of course. One other thing I do want to point out, now all you have to have is a cord, a normal electrical cord, extension cord to plug in and charge. No more external chargers because it's installed in the battery compartment. And I went out and bought a green one to match our cart. All right, that's it for today. Hope you liked today's video. If you do, give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe. I always need more subscribers. Hit the bell. You'll be notified of more content. And as always, thanks for watching. Go far with Greg.